This video is of a Western Electric number 3 crossbar switching system. This is a class 5 end office. There were only 28 of these manufactured, and there are 2 of them left as of 2022. They're both in either a museum or a private collection. This is a replacement video that's recorded in HD to replace one that I recorded 10 or 12 years ago in low D. I'm also correcting some of the narration from the earlier video. If you have a chance, please subscribe. And also, I have a Patreon account, and the link is listed below if you're interested in helping me to pay the electric to keep this thing online and to make additional videos. Thank you. This is the master test frame for the number 3 crossbar system. The number 3 crossbar system was a very small class 5 end office. The maximum lines that it could have been built out to after it had been modified would have been 1,200 lines. The initial design of the number 3 was 800 lines with the ability to have 4 or 8 party semi-selective ringing. This was built in the late 70s at the same time as the number 2 and number 3 ESS switching systems were being deployed. There were 28 number 3 crossbar switches manufactured according to engineering science in the Bell system, and as of 2022 there are only 2 of these machines left. The one that we're looking at, which is located by Salem, Oregon, and the other machine is in a museum at Ellsworth, Maine. This machine has been changed since it was moved. The original office code has been removed, and it has had a new office code of 543. This machine also has multiple EAS routes to step-by-step machines, such as a Western Electric 355 type office, a Stromberg Carlson XY, a North Electric CX100, an automatic electric step switch. There's also eventually going to be an iTech EMS 1 and 2 if I finish those projects. The master test frame in this machine indicates all of the trouble indication is done on a display. It does not have a perforator trouble recorder such as in a number 5 crossbar. And if you want to see a trouble recorder, go to the Connections Museum, and Sarah has managed to resurrect their trouble recorder, and they can punch cards, and it's quite the sight to see. This machine was originally built on a pallet at the factory, and then it was trucked to the site where it was installed and served its life. The location that this machine was in was Gabbs, Nevada, and then I bought this directly from Nevada Bell and then had to remove it and then transport it. It sat in storage for a few years prior to me completing the building that it is sitting in today. At this point, I have the trouble indicator on what is called remote, so it will not display anything other than a couple of troubles that I do have in the machine right now that I have not yet repaired. So I will transfer the panel back to local and make a few calls, and you will see things happening in progress of the office. There was a series of calls made, such as a local call, and then within the number 3 machine, and then EAS calls into step machines. The camera is positioned at the heart of the marker. I will make a few calls, and you will see this marker will perform one of 2 functions. Due to the fact I have 2 markers, they load share. I could busy the one out, but at this time I will let the machine work as it was intended. I dialed a 911 call, and we do not have the 911 trunk set up yet, so I had a call failure, which is what I was expecting. The other calls did complete through as they were anticipated. The office is set up as a normal central office, and there's very minimal distance between the fronts of the lineups. In my office, everything is set at 28 inches. So making any type of video of this stuff, unless you have an incredibly expensive camera, is difficult to get close to the relays to see them work, but I will attempt to do that on the next portion of this video. This is the terminal strips where the route relays are assigned and different code patterns for routing of calls. And then this is just more of the marker relays at the top of the relay rack. This is an originating register. I've busied out the other registers, so I will always hit this register. So at this point, I'm using a touch-tone telephone, and it will be much quicker than if I used a rotary phone. The originating register is where the dial tone is provided to the calling person, and it receives all of the digits either on a local call, EAS call, or well, any kind of call for that matter. I will connect the test set, a rotary test set at the mainframe, and make 1 or 2 calls. I will place a series of calls using a rotary telephone, and I'll make a few calls within the system and then some EAS calls into my step-by-step systems. Some of the calls I made was dialed into my step-by-step system, which is dial pulse. So this is a sender. It's capable of sending dial pulse or MF, depending on the trunk. This is one section of marker connector relays. This is primarily for the incoming registers and the originating registers. I will go on and off hook a few times, and we may or may not be able to see the relays operate. I don't know without digging into the drawings exactly what relay does what, and from this view I'm unable to tell. This is the incoming registers. There are 4 of them in the office. Due to the fact I cannot hold the camera and originate a call at this time, I will not be able to demonstrate this. However, everything happens very quickly. This is the first aisle of the number 3 crossbar, so we will pan down the aisle. This is approximately 20 feet long and 7 foot tall. We're looking at the rear of 2 of the 4 aisles of the number 3 machine. Over here on the right-hand side, the trunk plates that has the blue wiring are the trunks that I had to rewire in order to make them work with my step-by-step systems. I have approximately 10 more of them to build. Each trunk takes an average of about 2.5 hours to rewire once I have the new components added to the relay plates. When the number 3 machine was built, the office was mostly modular. However, there were 2 sets of double bays that are 32 inches wide. That was all one harness. Combined weight was in the excess of 2,000 pounds, approximately 1,800 to 2,000 pounds. So we had to cut a harness between bays 2 and 3, and this is one of the splices. This took me many hours to resplice it because I was laying on a cold concrete floor doing this. This is one of 2. Here is the other splice. Thankfully, I had access to a decommissioned number 1A ESS that used the same exact type of cable. The wiring on the number 3 crossbar is all 26 gauge wire. So it's a little more challenging to work with, but it can still be done. Here's the rear of some spare crossbar switches. And then the ones above are actually in use, incoming register link and outgoing sender link. Over here, sorry for the movement of the camera, is the rear of more crossbar switches. And I will take a picture of the front. Here's the junctor switches. Your trunks, registers, and so forth are accessed through these crossbar switches. These particular switches are what is called a CF type of a switch. These are a mini switch. The number 3 machine only used the mini crossbars. I will show momentarily the standard crossbar switch that was used in the number 1 and number 5 machines. These are crossbar switches that I removed from a PBX. They do not have any function in the number 3 office, but these are the standard size crossbars. I will place some calls and should be able to see some of the crossbar switches operate. Front of some of the trunks. The way this machine was designed, you have one incoming trunk and one outgoing trunk mounted in the physical bay. These trunks are plug-ended, which was only, to the best of my knowledge, used in the number 3 and number 5A crossbar machines. The regular crossbar switches, everything was hand wired in, which does make it nice when you want to rebuild a trunk or work on a trunk out of the frame. There's approximately 40 trunks in this office. Below, down at the very bottom, are the IAO intercoms. And those are the I have 30 of them, and those are what's used on intra-system calls. Because it's a lottery, it would be virtually impossible without busying out almost every IAO to land on the same one over and over. So I would skip that part of this presentation. We have the line link frame. My office has 400 subscriber lines, and we're looking at 200 of the 400, and then below on the bottom will be the other 200. With the angle of the camera, it'll be virtually impossible for me to catch the particular line that I'm calling from or to. And this is the second and third aisle of the number 3 crossbar. And again, these aisles are approximately 20 foot long. You have a lot of common equipment for 400 lines. The interrupter. This is working off of my step-by-step interrupter to reduce the power consumption and to have this machine online 24 hours a day. The dial tone, busy tone, and reorder tone, as well as additional office fusing, is done in this bay. Normally in a step-by-step you have ground connected tones. In a crossbar machine you have battery connected tones. So if there's a failure, you'll blow a fuse and light a light to indicate that there's a problem on a tone lead. A bunch of ballast lamps. These lamps should never illuminate unless there's a problem. The wiring field that we're looking at is part of what's called an LNT. That's the local number translator. This is where the telephone number is assigned to a line circuit, and the line circuit is assigned to a telephone number for long distance calls. This is accessed only when needed to look up the information to complete a call or where the call is originating from. These are the marker connector relays for this particular LNT. The LNTs I have 300 phone numbers for each one, and there's a 0 and 1. I'm at the other end of the aisle looking down towards the wall where the line equipment is. The rear of an LNT and the marker connector relays, and then storage of relay plates for parts. Here's the rear of the line equipment. So this is what the back of the 4 100 line blocks look like in the line length frame. The rear of aisles 2 and 3 of the crossbar. The fourth aisle is made up of number 1A type ESS relay racks. The end guard, so it says 1A even though it's not a 1A. I just got that to finish off the aisle. This is the original ringing and tone plant that came with the number 3 machine. This does work as I had it online for a period of time. However, with all of the DC to DC converters, this unit, which would be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, draws approximately 10 amps of 48 volt DC. That would be an excessively large bill for me at the end of the month just having this idle. I have a recorded announcement bay that was in a number 1A ESS office. Someday I do hope to have this online and working. This has 6 different outgoing messages on the drums. I have listened to them, but I don't remember what any of the messages were. It came out of a 1A office that was close to 100,000 lines and had multiple Centrexes in it. I believe there was 9 bays of recorded announcement in that office. This is a mini Cosmic frame. This is the item that was with the number 3 office. The blue connecting blocks down here are exactly the same type of blocks as found in a conventional Cosmic frame. Those are for a punch down type of a terminal. The remaining green blocks are for wire wrap. So there's a slight mixture. I have the 303 protectors, and in the near future I've got about 200 plus cross connects to run to connect phones to this machine. And then I added an 18 button phone that was found in a maintenance control center of a number 1 ESS office. This is one of 2 fuse distributions for the number 3 machine. The rear of the power distribution and the rear of the mainframe. And this is the fourth aisle that's part of the number 3 Crossbar machine. Part of the central office cable rack. This is feeding the power and all of the switchboard leads to the number 3 Crossbar machine. The number 3 is a 7-foot environment. The rest of my office is a 9-foot environment. The waterfall drop off into the number 3. I was a professional central office equipment installer, so I know how to run the cable and sew the cable. Not much of the office is actually done this way due to the massive amount of labor involved. The string is a wax-coated string, and unless you do this all of the time, it cuts your hands up. The top of the number 3 machine. The crossover ducts as well as the cable troughs were all from a number 1A ESS office that was being wrecked out. Thank you for watching the video. If you have a chance, please subscribe and press the thumbs up button. Please do not smash the thumbs up button. I do not want you to have a broken mouse or an injured thumb.